Hello everybody and welcome back to the Beads of Paradise NYC YouTube channel. I am Emily and today we're going to do a quick little how-to on how to do wire wrapping, which is how both of my earrings and this little pendant of mine were made, and how all of these little samples that I made for a normal findings crash course were made as well. So you can see there's a whole lot of things you can do with wire wrapping. So today we're going to learn a very simplified version just to get you guys started, and maybe we'll get more complicated in future videos if people show an interest. So first things first, let's go over the tools that you're going to need. So first you're going to need your flat nose pliers, your round nose pliers with these little rounded spires, and your cutters. So those are the main tools that you are going to need. And then you're going to need, very basically to start, is a little head pin. There's also little pins with balls in the bottom called a ball pin, and little decorative ones, like this one's called a Bali dot because it has a decorative design on the bottom. But either way, you need a piece of wire, and for this simple design, you'll need one with a little stopper at the bottom. So I'm going to show you two very simple examples, and so we're going to ride right on the hot tails of our last video where we covered the face beads, and I'm going to use those to make some fun little wire wrapped pieces. So we have our head pin and we have our bead. Now ideally you should be able to drop your bead directly onto your pin and have it stay, but see, sometimes the holes are big and they fall right through. So in that case, in that situation, I can take a small little bead. I went upstairs and I grabbed a little metal bead, so it will be very inconspicuous. Dropped it on, and then voila, I could plop on my little face bead, any bead that you want to use, and there's how you start. So then, for our very, very simple example of how we're going to do this, at first, I'm just going to take my round nose pliers, place them here, and the great thing about your round nose pliers is it goes from large to small, so that sort of designates how large you want the loop that we're going to make. So I want to make a fairly petite one, so I'm pretty close to the tip, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to use my hands. The tool isn't going to move, only my fingers are going to move, and I'm going to bend my wire over the tool, give it a little twist up, bend it around. So really all we're doing is winding our wire around the round nose plier. That's like the very, very simplest way to explain what our goal is. So when you take your pliers out, you have a loop, and then you have a little space below it, and then I switch the pliers out for my flat nose that just sort of hold that loop that you just worked to make in place. And then I'm going to take my hands and wind that wire around, ideally going from top down to your bead, but you know, there's many different variations upon this you can take. So you wind it until you hit your bead, and you could keep yours very, very small, or you could have a little fun with it and create a little hat like I'm doing here. So you have a little, once you're done with your wire wrap as you see fit, then you're going to take your cutters, and you are going to snip that wire as close as you can to the edge of your wire wrap. So you might have to wiggle it at a weird angle, and you want to hold that scrap of wire when you cut it, because otherwise it's going to fly. And then if you have any bit of wire sticking out, you're going to take it with your pliers, your flat nose pliers. That's going to be the best one to use. Just give anything a little bit of a press if you need it. You're just going to gently press any little wonky bits in, and then voila, we have a very simple little wire wrap. So now we're going to do a slightly more involved version of that wire wrap that gets you a little bit more of a precise loop at the very top of your bead. In case you felt that first way was a little bit too easy, a little too swift, and you want to be a little bit more precise, I'm going to show you how to do that as well. So again, the bead that I'm going to use is a little big, so I'm taking a little teeny one, and you could do a wire wrap on something as teeny tiny as this. Doesn't have to be a big bead. It could be as big or as small as you like. but I'm taking this fun little silly face bead and plopping it right there. And so your first step this time is to take your flat nose pliers, place it directly on top of your bead. And again, this has that big shape, so you could use it as a mold. So if you wanted to make a large bend, you'd be far back here. If you wanted to make a small bend, you'd be pretty close here. And we're going to be doing a fairly small bend, so I'm right close to the tip. So then I'm going to take my fingers, my hand holding the tool is not going to do anything, and I'm going to bend the wire towards me at a 90-degree angle. So nice and flat. So when you take your pliers out, you should see a little space there between your bead and that bend. So then you're going to take your rounded nose pliers and place them directly in that space. Ideally, you should have space between your bead and where that little bend is. Sometimes I like to call it an armpit, and if you imagine you want to pick somebody up and grab them from up here as opposed to, you know, some other random spot. So then, with my little wire in place, my little tool in place, again, my hand holding the tool right now is not going to do anything, and I'm going to take my fingers to take the wire up, over, and down. And you could give it a little bit of tug, and remember, always remember, you're the boss of the wire, it's not the boss of you. Sometimes you need to give it a little bit of a tug, a little bit of a pull, but whatever it takes to get it to do what you want it to do, don't feel afraid of it. Go for it. So that first little bend sort of started to form the top of that loop right there. And you could, in theory, just kind of keep going and wind it around right there. But some people like to get their loop extremely centered. So in order to do that, and this is also an example of how much control over the wire you have, I like to call this next shape making a little question mark shape. So once you go up, over, and down, I'm then going to take my wire and my hand holding the tool. And this is the one time my hand holding the tool is going to move. And instead, I'm going to hold the bead steady, and I'm going to give my wrist a little twist towards me. And sort of that starts to form that little question mark shape. And that is sort of the continuation, that's the start of your little loop that you're making. So after you do that, you're going to straighten, if your pliers were like this, you're going to pull them back straight again, and then you're going to pull the wire back towards you. You're going to stop at that little 90-degree angle so that, again, you have your wire wrapped just around your tool, and you ideally have that little space below there. And that's where your wire wrapping is going to go, and that's where that first little space where you put your pliers helps to mark out. So if you don't have enough space to wire wrap, you would move a little bit further back on here at that first bend. If you have too little, you're going to move closer to here. So after we do that wrap, we can take our pliers out, and you see you have a little space, and then you have your loop. So then you're going to take your pliers, grab that loop you worked so hard to make. This also helps stop you from getting so involved in the wrapping that you wind up with your loop being all twisted. But that's not that hard to fix. You just sort of pull it back, but this helps you get around it. So I hold that plier out of the way, and I'm starting with my wire nice and flat, like so. And then I'm going to wind it, and ideally I'm going to go from the top down to my bead. I'm going to wind it top, and you're not just sort of absent-mindedly swirling, though you can if you like to, and then directing it as I twirl it. So I'm sort of making a little spiral staircase down until I hit my bead. And see, these things happen. They fall. This is a sort of a wonky bead. But see, you get the general idea. You have your little wire wrap and your wire. And then you're going to take your cutters. And again, I'm going to hold this little scrap of wire because otherwise it will fly when I cut it. Give it a little snip as close as I can to the edge of the coils, and then I'm going to take my flat nose pliers and go in and fix up any wonky bits. And occasionally I've been able to fix like a not so great wire wrap just by gently pressing it. But if you look at indie designer stuff, there's so many different interpretations of wire wrap in theory. As long as you have a loop and then you have some wire wraps to keep it sturdy, then you're good. So there's a lot of room for you to have fun and to play with this. So as we're finishing up, I'm going to show you a few things you could do with this. So you can make an earring. So I have this little earring base, and I'm just going to pop that end open, and we'll go over more stuff like this in subsequent videos. And I'm going to drop that on, and voila, I have a little face necklace earring. Where's my hole? There we go. So another thing you could do with one of your wire wrapped pieces is take a piece of cord or chain, slip it through that hole, and voila, you have the start of a necklace. And see, in this case, I'm just going to do a quick little tie it on so you can see how it goes, but you can do a clasp, you can do sliding knots, it gives you all sorts of things. But with a simple wire wrap, you can do so many things. So thank you guys for joining me today. I hope you all learned something. If you have any questions, feel free to hit me up in the comments. I'm going to leave you several notes in the description. And if you would like to shop some of these supplies on our website, we sell them all on our website, you can do so through the link in the description. And if you want to get a 10% off discount, you can use the code GETWrappedUp. And hope to see you soon. Have a wonderful day. If you like our videos, please subscribe.